All right, my first guest tonight is a Libertarian MP from the socialist state of Victoria. David Limerick joins me to discuss some of the political news of the week. David, great to have you on. Look, I just gave Victorian Premier Dan Andrews some credit for being a masterful manipulator, but I have to acknowledge the latest polls suggest the act might be wearing a bit thin. 1,000 Victorians were surveyed, resulting in a net likeability rating of -7. When questioned about the results, he shrugged it off in the typical Andrews fashion. Have a look at this.
We have one poll every 4 years that matters, and that's the only one I'm here to comment on. And in the meantime, we'll do what we've always done. We'll do the right thing, not chase the popular thing.
David, this is the second poll just a few weeks that shows Dan's popularity is slipping. What do you think sparked the change?
Cory, I think Victorians are starting to realise the waste and how much big government is impacting their lives. I'm concerned that people are too fixated on the individual, though. You know, this idea that, you know, if people don't like Dan, that someone else will be able to come in, someone will be a better manager or more charismatic or whatever the case may be, when the real underlying problem here is that government has gotten so big and therefore the individual so small that we need to start looking at, you know, what's the real problem here is the expansion of government. And I think that it's time we draw a line in the sand and say, maybe we should start looking at rolling back the size of the state. Maybe we should start cutting government expenditure and taxes. And maybe we should start looking at empowering the individual instead of empowering the government.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%, but it doesn't seem to be what people want. People aren't, I mean, you're getting elected on those sorts of platforms, but governments are, you know, receiving success by promising the people more. How are we ever going to make this change?
I think that eventually financial reality will come to bite us in the bum. You know, like, you can't keep spending money, and in some cases spending money for literally nothing, and raising taxes without people sooner or later pricking up and saying, well, hang on a minute, I'm the person paying for this. It's not the government paying for this. It's taxpayers paying for this. And all of these terrible things that the government's doing, they're doing it with my money. So, you know, I think people are waking up to this, that it's a bit of a con, really, that not just this government, I mean, you know, big governments all throughout the world, eventually they get to a point where they have to face financial reality. We're very close to that in Victoria. Our debt's running out of control. Taxes just keep going up and up and up. And people eventually, it hurts them financially. We're hurting in Victoria now. Cost of living pressures are hurting people, and they're starting to ask questions of who's responsible, and it's the government.
It is. It's always the government. They're not your friends. Hey, can I turn to something that's been a hot topic this week, nuclear energy? We saw Australia's most successful business person, Gina Rinehart. She came out in support of it this week. And while the coalition actually did nothing to support it while in office, they've courageously found a voice to repeal a federal ban now that they're in opposition. But I was interested to find out there's also a 40-year-old ban in Victoria, and you've put forward a bill to change this. But I'd ask you, is this just symbolic? Because it wouldn't amount to much unless the feds act, would it?
Well, there's a couple of issues here. Firstly, a lot of these actions on energy policy really are symbolic in the global scheme of things. So I would say that, you know, doing something that's symbolic isn't necessarily a bad thing. But in the short term, putting, you know, energy policy aside, what this prohibition does in Victoria is bans Victoria from participating in anything to do with the nuclear fuel cycle. And so what's made me think it's more urgent is we've got this plan now in Australia to have these nuclear submarines, and Victoria is going to be prohibited from taking any part in that at all. Because, you know, why would anyone set up maintenance facilities or anything in a state where all nuclear activities are prohibited? So I think that, you know, Victoria, there's massive opportunities in Victoria. We've got, you know, excellent science capabilities in our universities. We've got, you know, lots of scientists that could be educated and trained here and physicists that could work on these sorts of projects. And yet we're tying our hands behind our back. I think it's just crazy.
Yeah, you're 100% right. But as a South Australian, I'm hoping you keep the ban in place so we can have all the maintenance and all the research and the industry here. And I'm sure they're saying the same in New South Wales and elsewhere. So good luck with that. Hey, what do you make of this? At a federal level, the Prime Minister has said he's going to increase the government's home building target to 1.2 million homes. The housing industry have said, well, we better get started because it's 240 homes per year. They've never achieved that pace before. And I would add it's almost impossible in the wake of ongoing supply chain and labour and skill problems in this country. What do you make of it?
Look, I think a lot of the problems with housing are, again, caused by the government itself. I'm in the middle of a stamp duty inquiry at the moment that's been looking at many of these issues around housing. One of the submissions to that said that around 40 to 50% of the land cost for new houses is made up of taxes, levies and fees caused by government. If you look at our planning system, our taxation system, all of these things are just have been standing in the way for forever on new houses getting built. We need to get taxes out of the way. We need to get restrictions out of the way to allow houses to be built. There's been so many cases of things like, stamp duty is the obvious one that misallocates housing, makes it more difficult for people to move to housing that's more appropriate to their requirements, inhibits labour mobility, all of these sorts of other issues. And that's just one tax that's causing all these issues. Imagine all these other taxes and restrictions and planning controls that are causing all these problems. Again, it's a case of government's caused problems, and now people are saying, well, we need more government to solve the problems caused by government in the first place. Maybe government should just get out of the way.